Hello, and welcome to the show Goldsquadrongays. It's the podcast where two Star Wars loving gays break down each episode of their favorite Star Wars TV shows while also being gay as hell. I'm your host, Bradley Brower.
I'm your other host, Charles Rogers, and I'm not dead.
You'll get it at the end of the episode.
You'll get it at the end of the episode. No, I'm in a pretty good place. If you're listening in the Goldsquadrongays chronological order, then you would have just listened to Mando episode 0, which we recorded 24 hours after I had tooth surgery.
Yeah.
So that was fun. However, my tooth is healing the area is healing very nicely. I just had an appointment this morning.
Nice.
Feeling so good. I'm even going to be able to go and get some writing done this afternoon, which is very exciting. But we did record our Mando episode 0 while I was on a bunch of painkillers.
Which will be very fruitful when we actually watch the show. Yeah.
In 2 weeks, which I deliberately did as a segue so that I can mention. There may be some questions if you're just joining us. We've tried to reiterate it multiple times, but we'll be reiterating it now for the final time. So if you're joining us after this episode, too bad. This is your explanation. We are not covering Mandalorian as it comes out. We are sticking with Bad Batch because we want to give Star Wars animation its due, and we want to approach Mandalorian the same way we've approached the last 2 seasons, which worked out really well for us. So we are going to finish out the Bad Batch, do our Bad Batch recap, and then there will be a Mando episode 0 that we recorded last week prior to either of us watching the episode. So the backlogged episode will come out. You will get to see how wrong we were about several things in that episode, but also how right we were about several things in that episode.
That's right.
That'll be fun. We've got some cool guests that we've lined up, a lot of familiar faces for our Mando and Book of Boba Fett coverage, so it's going to be really exciting, but for now we are sticking with the Bad Batch. Speaking of the Bad Batch, I don't think there was any major Star Wars news or anything that blew up this week that I think isn't complete and utter bullshit.
Yeah, I was gonna say nothing we can talk about. Yeah, nothing we can talk about here.
Stuff always happens. When I'm choosing like what's gonna go on the show, what am I gonna mention, what I'm gonna bring up to Bradley in the pre-meeting for screening, 95% of things that happen on the Star Wars internet get discounted for me looking at it and going, this is the dumbest fucking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've been to like the first week of an independent drag show competition. Yeah. And some of this stuff beats out some of those auditions. And I'm like, we're not going to bring that to the show. We're going to focus on the good Star Wars stuff and not whatever X person said this week that everyone's mad about. Did you know Bo-Katan is like 40, late 40s?
Again, save it for our Mando discussion because I have too many thoughts on that.
Anyway, we do support Bo-Katan Kryze on this podcast, and she did nothing wrong ever in The Mandalorian at all. All of her choices are good, and I support them. Speaking of choices that are being made by people, The Bad Batch, Season 2, episode... What the fuck episode are we on now? 9?
11.
11? Fuck me. Fuck me.
Yeah, we're almost done. Like, we're getting close. Like, so.
Listen, here's what happened. Here was my Wednesday, all right? Do you know, Bradley, look at me. Do you know how fucking lucky you are that you only watch the visual media? Because there was like 4 or 5 comics issues that came out on Wednesday. So I had to read all of those, come home, watch The Mandalorian, and then watch The Bad Batch.
I could barely watch The Mandalorian and The Bad Batch on the same day. I don't know how you're doing that plus reading.
I had an additional time. And on March 7th, Battle Scars is coming out. And our friends over at the Divas Discord, we have a book club, and Battle Scars is the book we're reading.
Of course.
So I don't even get to delay on that one, not that I would want to anyway. Oh, this was such a busy Star Wars week. I'm so tired. Bradley, can you take us into the episode, please?
Absolutely. So we're talking about, like you said, Season 2, Episode 11, titled Metamorphosis. This week, the Bad Batch finds a mysterious missing vessel. Charles, what is one thing you liked about the episode where Crosshair gets turned into an insect, and one thing you did not?
Yeah, so the one thing I really liked was I really liked the opening scene where Crosshair wakes up in his bed and he's transformed into a gigantic insect. Well, I really also liked the Kafka's exploration of the futility of life and, you know, the bleakness and exploring that hopeless, oppressive air that really defines this show and this genre. One thing I disliked is how he does turn back into Crosshair at the end. He doesn't remain a bug, which I did think, I was pretty sure was a departure from the original source material. It's been a while since I've read it. So that was sort of an issue I had. I felt like they kind of kid-friendly up the adaptation.
I hate you so much.
I can keep this bit going.
Anyway, what did you
genuinely really one thing I liked and one thing I disliked. I really liked the sort of vibe that this episode went for. It was a very dark episode, and I mean that both visually dark and also some dark stuff happens in this episode. And I really did like the way that they handled the pacing and the atmosphere. There's a note I'll have very early on that talks about like the atmospheric quality of how this episode is directed and written and scored. One thing I disliked, I guess I've gotten sort of spoiled on the good character moments, because I felt like this episode was really heavy on the plot. And other than a few instances where I'll point out, especially surrounding Omega, I didn't think we were getting any of those good character moments that we got like for Faster. Now, Faster was an episode that had basically no relevance on the main plot, but it had a lot of good moments. And even like, what was the episode after Clone Conspiracy? Truth and Consequences. Even Truth and Consequences took time to have some little quiet moments with people. And this one I felt lacked those. That they're there, but there's not as many as... It's a lot of maneuvering people into place for the final batch of episodes to happen. Bradley, what about you? One thing you liked and one thing you did not.
One thing I like was I like the storyline of there's a creature that's escaped and is killing people. Very Alien-esque, storyline, which I kind of like, especially with the Bad Batch, However, one thing I did not like is how in the same vein of that, the trope is always that, like, for some reason, our heroes or our group or whoever you're following in the story never seems to die at the hands of this mysterious alien that escapes that just murdered everybody else. But for some reason, your people stay alive the whole entire movie. But anyway, that's just a nitpicky thing. I actually very much enjoyed the episode. I thought it was fun. However, I was disappointed that, in fact, this was not a metamorphosis of Crosshair's character arc, and it was just a whatever,
Yeah, they're really swinging and missing on these titles.
I don't think half of them even make sense half the time. I mean, I get this one, like this one's clearly just referring to the beast, right? Like it's just monster, changing. Yeah, the monster, whatever. So that makes sense, I guess. But like some of these, I'm just kind of like, what is the point of these episode titles? Like they don't make sense to me. Like the crossing being the main.
The crossing is the big one. The crossing is the one where you kind of have to squint to be like, I guess you can see why it was called that. Faster, I thought just was a bad episode title. Like
you could have called that episode Driven. You could have called that episode Speed. You could have called, literally anything.
Right.
Like, they were just
Faster,
picking a name
really,
out of a hat. Yeah.
That one was bad. I wasn't super wild about Tribe, the episode title Tribe.
Yeah, again.
So some of these episode titles are like swing and a miss.
Yeah, they're kind of lame.
As far as like describing. And Metamorphosis just does a terrible job of describing like what actually, like, yeah, the creature transforms at the end of the episode, but nobody else metamorphosizes. There's no like reason for that to be the focus of the episode. The thing about title, right? I'm a writer. I mentioned writing earlier. I'm going to bring it up now. I fucking hate titles. And the problem with writing a title is that you have to accurately set the stage for what is going to be in the thing that you are writing about. So like the novel Thrawn is about Thrawn.
Thank God.
You pick it up and it's pretty clear that it's going to be Thrawn, or something like Light of the Jedi, right? The entire vibe of Light of the Jedi is setting up the Jedi of the High Republic. Here is the Light of the Jedi in the galaxy. That's the reason for that title. Or even, I forgot where that was going. Anyway, my point is that some of these titles are doing a really, really bad job of conveying what's actually in the episode, to where the episode is fine, but the label that's been slapped on it is like, why did that doesn't make sort of squint and you can see where you were going for, but
Right.
that's a bad title.
I agree.
Anyway, let's for real talk about the episode. So you called it like Alien?
Yeah.
So I had 3 different things that I specifically noted it gave me the vibes of that I really liked. One was Dead Space, the video game Dead Space.
Okay.
My second thought was it's giving the middle section of Republic Commando. Have you played Republic Commando?
I have not.
So the middle section of Republic Commando, you basically land on, I think it's a Republic ship. I don't know. I haven't played it in a while, and I'm not allowing myself to buy any new Switch games until I finish Breath of the Wild. So I'll get to it in a little bit, but you land on like this deserted ship and you have to run around and it's very horror like inspired. And then the third thing it reminded me of was Death Troopers. Bradley's giving me that look like I should know what Death Troopers is because I'm sure he's mentioned it, but I have 3 brain cells and I didn't retain this information.
Those are the black ones.
Okay, so technically you're right.
Okay.
In canon, Death Troopers referred to the black armored stormtroopers. I was meaning it in the context of Death Troopers, the novel.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so do you remember around the late aughts when for some reason we can't really identify, everything was fucking zombies for like 5 minutes?
Oh, yeah.
The Walking Dead came out of this. The Walking Dead came out of the back of this.
Gotcha.
Because for whatever reason, for like 30 seconds, it was longer than that, we got zombies fucking everywhere. Because we had the 2006 Dawn of the Dead movie that Zack Snyder did, and we had they were in every video game. Every video game had a zombie mode. I was really into it because I'm a big fan of the original Romero Living Dead films, and I also think World War Z is one of the best books ever written. It's seriously so good. Death Troopers came out of that. And Death Troopers was zombies, Star Wars set on derelict like prison barge and also Star Destroyer, Han Solo and Chewbacca in it. I thought it was the greatest thing in the world in 2009. But then I also thought I was straight in 2009.
Well, there you go.
So anyway, that's what this reminded this opening scene.
I was confused for a second. I was like, what? I was trying to go back to what the original thought process was, and you're like, this reminds you of that. Okay, great. Good. Glad we spent 5 minutes on zombies.
It was very important. It was very important that I give the context to the novel Death Troopers.
Of course.
Because it is absolutely, well, if you look at like the trajectory of Star Wars, it seems to come the fuck out of nowhere. That they're like random zombie novel in 2008 or 2009. Yeah, that's why, because everything was zombies around then. And now we're just tired of them. We haven't had a like mainstream zombie thing in ages, except for maybe The Walking Dead. Anyway, we zip over to Mount Tantus, and we meet several different people. Are you ready for a long list of people who are voicing characters?
Okay, start with least important and then go to most important, because that way we can end the discussion with the more characters. Yeah.
That is what we will do. So the least important person in this scene is Dr. Skulder.
Okay.
Dr. Skulder is the doctor who is already there, who's standing on the landing platform. Dr. Skulder is being voiced by Helen Sadler. We've encountered Helen Sadler before. She is the voice of Rey in basically all of the Lego Star Wars stuff.
Gotcha. Mm-hmm.
The next one is Emery Carr. Emery Carr is the woman that is with the man who we'll get to in a minute who disembarks from the shuttle. Emery Carr is being voiced by Keisha Castle-Hughes.
Okay.
Is this person's name. I just clicked over to her IMDb page and I need to clarify something in my brain. Keisha Castle-Hughes, I know her generally recently the best for being Obara Sand in Game of Thrones, but she's also been in The Walking Dead, and this is not her first appearance in Star Wars.
Oh, who did she play before?
She played the Queen of Naboo in a little movie called Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, so she was the other queen, the replacement queen.
Yes, she is the queen in the Padme's funeral scene.
Ah, okay, cool.
Specifically, that queen's name is Queen fuck me, I'm gonna try that again. Specifically, that queen's name is Queen Queen Apolana.
Okay,
She is the queen in the Padme's funeral scene.
I like it.
Finally, Dr. Royce Hemlock, the least subtle name in this show, is being voiced by Jimmy Simpson. You've seen Jimmy Simpson before, but I bet you don't know you've seen Jimmy Simpson before. Jimmy Simpson is a that guy on TV. He is best known for portraying William in Westworld.
Young William in Westworld.
Young William in Westworld.
Spoilers.
I don't know. I haven't seen Westworld in a while.
Oh,
I only saw the first 2 seasons.
I think that's only a spoiler for the first season, but...
Okay, well, he's young William in Westworld.
There you go.
The first season of that was so good. I know him the best for House of Cards. He plays Gavin Orsay, and The Newsroom, where he plays Jack Spaniel. But he's that guy. He's been in a lot of different TV shows, like one-off episodes. He's been in Psych. He's been in How I Met Your Mother.
Gotcha.
He's that guy.
You know, what's funny is I heard his voice when Dr. Hemlock started speaking, and I was like, I know this voice. Like, it was so weird. I could not put my finger on it. I had to look it up later.
Same. No, yeah. I was exactly the same way. I was like, who the fuck is voicing this? Is it is it like is it Sam Witwer? What's going on
that
here?
guy.
Because I know this voice. I know this voice so much. It's
that guy.
It's that guy. It's Jimmy Simpson, who we've seen before.
Gotcha.
Who is just hamming it up as the voice of Dr. Hemlock. Like, he is having the greatest time, because Jimmy Simpson normally plays these like kind of distrustful and skeevy, but not like evil characters. And here he's just getting to ham it up as like, no, he is the evil doctor character, and he is having a blast.
I love the portrayal though, because you're right. It's very like Dr. Frankenstein, very like he hams it up. It's just like a good super villain.
It's
doctor.
Really reminiscent of like the Hammer horror movies, or like classic horror movies, in the way he plays this evil doctor.
I like it. He's like it's almost like a secondary villain. Like I know the villain of the show technically is supposed to be the Empire, but this is kind of like our face to a villain now. Aside from Palpatine or Tarkin.
He's our arc villain.
Right. He's our current villain. Yeah, he's the current villain, right.
My next note is, oh hi, Nalase.
Yeah, just randomly shows up.
She's here. Nalase being voiced again by Gwendolyn Yo.
I was shocked to see her.
Yeah, well, we knew she was coming back because she showed up at the end. Now, in the intervening time, I didn't realize that she also does a whole bunch of voices in Mass Effect, because I hadn't played Mass Effect when we reviewed season 1, but she does a lot of voices in Mass Effect, so I'm mentioning that. It's nice to see her back, though, Nalase.
I was going to say it's nice, but I don't know if she's going to be sticking around very long in this show. Yeah, I'm getting the sense that she's
making it to the end of the season.
I don't think so. I think
her and another character who we're about to learn about in a second. We'll get to him, but first, Dr. Hemlock does drop in the show. He does confirm that we are on Mount Tantus, which, if you remember from our Bad Batch Season 1 coverage, Mount Tantus was a big deal in Legends. It was the Emperor's cloning facility, where he was doing weird cloning shit, because he did weird cloning shit in Legends. He also came back in multiple clone bodies in Legends, which was hilarious. We don't have time to get into that, because apparently Lama Su is still alive.
Somehow.
I flipped my shit. I was watching this with my boyfriend, and he knows what he's getting into when he watches these things with me. But when they were like, because I thought Lama Su was dead. We both thought Lama Su was dead. I did a whole TikTok about how Lama Su's dead. And then they're like, no, Lama Su's still alive. The second they said that, I jumped up from the couch. I was like, what? What? And my boyfriend's like, you need to calm down.
Yeah.
That is entirely too big of a reaction. I'm like, he's supposed to be dead. The last time we saw him, the troopers were pointing blasters at him, and we heard blaster fire.
I love that.
Like,
yeah.
How is he? Apparently he's alive.
You know what? Maybe we just don't know that Kaminoans are just like super agile, and they just like are able to escape blaster fire very quickly or something. I don't know.
They missed. They shot the blasters, but they missed.
Or in Star Wars fashion, he was shot and presumed dead, but then just comes back to life as a cyborg, I guess, of some kind.
You know how we should have known is we never saw a body.
Yep, that's my number one rule in Star Wars.
We should have known. We should have known when we never saw a body. Well, this asshole's back, I guess. Yay. It is time for Whose Goddamn White Baby Is That? The
Bring it
segment of
on.
the show where I, a white person, tell you how bad the whitewashing of the clones looked to me on my HD TV in the dark, which is the optimal way to watch this show, short of watching it in the theater screen. And my impression this episode was, again, it depends on the lighting. When they're being lit by, like, when they're talking to Sid and they're all on the flat lighting with the hologram, I was like, yeah, this looks okay. Not great. But then there's like another shot where like it's Wrecker in the background and he's in the shadow and Omega's being lit up by like a computer monitor. This one looks terrible because she looks like multiple shades lighter than him. And like the contrast is really clear and I'm like, I don't like that. So largely with this one, it depends on the lighting. Whenever they're in like not bright blue lighting, they're fine. Otherwise, no, that lighting on that, it's not as good as some of the other episodes we've seen. It's not as bad as some of the early episodes. So that was my impression of how white these people are. Also, they keep their helmets on most of the episode. Once the episode
When in doubt,
when in doubt, just shove the helmet on there because then we don't have to fix it.
Right.
There we go. Put the helmet on. Put the helmets on more, guys. The helmets stay on during sex.
And to be honest, I actually like the character
unrelated-
design better with the models. Like with the helmets on, I
helmets
like
on.
the character design better.
Low-key, me too. Like, I started noticing when they do it because I also don't have to pay attention to how white they look in a lot of the scenes. But I was kind of like, this season, I was like, I really like, because the animation's so good with the
Right.
body movement that I'm like, I'm honestly more invested in these characters with their helmets on.
Exactly. And also because I just happen to have the Funko Pops of all the Bad Batch. And
Oh,
I
of
have
course
both
you do.
the unmasked and the masked versions of all the characters. Most of them, I would argue, look better with the mask on. But or the helmets on, I should say, and especially Tech. Like, I honestly, Tech should never take his helmet off, only for the sheer fact that he has a terrible, terrible hairline. And then they just need to like let him keep the helmet on. Oh, not even the skin factor. It's literally just because he looks better with his Tech helmet on and his glasses on. Like, just keep all that on, and then
I'm
I'd be
sorry.
happy.
I'm sorry to all tech enjoyers out there. Especially Hope. I do apologize that I have to agree with Bradley. I like Tech well enough. I am attracted to his personality. The helmet stays on.
Loves it.
Anyway, that concludes our segment on Whose Goddamn White Baby Is That? The segment I feel obligated to point out because I don't want to give the show any sort of praise or discussion without pointing out the issues with the skin tone. The Bad Batch has learned about capitalist exploitation. The Bad Batch has decided to form a union
That clearly.
and negotiate with their employer, continuing the themes from last week of Charles being absolutely delighted to see pro-labor negotiation taking place in this show. There are no politics in Star Wars, and my personal politics do not make it onto this show. These are things that are true and accurate. Yeah, so they're actually negotiating with Sid, which is interesting, and then they're discussing, like, actually walking away from Sid because they're like, well, shit, we're being exploited super hard.
Right. We don't like this. We're not going to put up with it.
No, we're going to go on strike. We're going to
And
negotiate for better conditions, and if management doesn't acquiesce to our demands, we're going to go on strike.
And also, I like how Tech's like, yeah, this is gonna be like the last thing, guys. Like, we should just do this. Although I think common sense would just be like, nah, we're just not gonna do anything whatsoever and just leave. Like, that would make more sense. But I like how Tech's like, all right, for story's
I see
sake.
his point to
Yeah.
where he's like, well, this job went south. The Epsium job went south, super south.
Right. We gotta do one good thing.
We're mad at Sid about that. We don't want to seem like we're storming out because of that. We want to have one thing go somewhat right, and then we're going to say, okay, we're walking away.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. I get the logic.
However, I like Hunter's explanation afterwards, like, but she like gave us limited intel on this fucking job. Like, she never gives us like enough information. And so it's like almost more trouble than it's worth.
It's also too kind of a win-win because if things go south, which they do, they can go back to her and say, well, you've given us limited information. You gave us limited information about the Epstein.
Right.
You gave us limited information about this. We're not doing this anymore. Bye. Which is also, I think, looking at the overall arc 2 with Sid and the Batch. I think that it feels sort of rushed in hindsight. Like, one thing that would have made their hesitation to leave a little stronger is if they, I don't know, still had a debt outstanding to her, but they randomly resolved that off screen 2/3 of the way through through season 1.
Right.
And then Infested dropped the ball so hard that we have no reason to believe that any of these people actually care about Sid, which...
Yeah.
If Infested had given us some sort of like deeper connection between the two, or some sort of better character writing, then maybe it would have been like, okay, this makes more sense. But and then this season they're kind of setting up this eventual confrontation between Sid and the Batch, but we'll have to see where it goes.
Yeah, I think they're kind of at that point where it's like, oh, well, now if it didn't happen in this episode, now it's going to happen in the next episode because clearly
I think the
done.
next episode's going to be the Crosshair episode because they left on a big cliffhanger here. And Dr. Hemlock knows about Omega. So I think they're going to send Crosshair after Omega. I think that's where this is going, is now Dr. Hemlock's like, well, we got to get this clone. Congratulations, we're all going after Omega again. Yay. One of the things I do when I prepare to record these episodes is I go through and I read through the Wikipedia summaries, even though we don't use them to summarize the live action shows anymore because they totally screwed Bradley up on Andor.
Yep.
It just identifies this place they go to as a village on a planet. No idea what planet it is.
Let's keep it simple.
It's a village on a planet. We go there. I do like how multiple times throughout this episode, and remember I mentioned at the beginning thinking there weren't a lot of like good character moments. One of the exceptions is that Omega gets to show off that she actually was a medical assistant.
Was she now?
Yeah, do you remember this back in season 1 when they first meet her? She's Nala Se's medical assistant. So she knows all about Kaminoan medtech. So she can not only identify it, but later on in the episode when she and Tech are getting the data, she knows exactly what console to use. Not even just because she's experienced that kind of console before, just because she's knowledgeable enough in the overall Kaminoan medical tech to identify that as what that console does. So I really like how she gets a chance to show off that, no, she did have a job.
She was a working class child.
She was a working child, which... Oof. I'm just realizing in hindsight how fucked up that is. Nala Se, what the fuck? Ma'am, what were you doing? But I did like that a lot. My next note is, oh yeah, we're doing the horror plot. This was in response to the droid falling out.
Right, a little jump scare.
The little jump scare. There's quite a few jump scares in this episode. Like, if I was 8 and watching this episode, this would freak me the fuck out.
Yeah, I noticed that I know it's for kids, but it's also like not in a way. But it is, but it isn't. Yeah, there's a little bit of it's definitely a teen show, I would say, for maybe not as much for kids.
It's babies first, older kids first horror movie.
Right. It's very subtle, like a very tame.
It's very subtle.
Horror movie.
Like if you're over about the age of 15 and you're watching this, the jump scares aren't going to jump you that much. I think part of it is because, I've watched enough horror movies that I'm familiar with the timing of jump scares. So I could identify like, okay, there's a jump scare probably coming here. If you're like 6, you're not gonna know that. So this is gonna freak you the fuck out. It's like baby's first horror movie.
That's
baby's
so funny
first alien.
that you brought this up, because I literally just saw a TikTok today about Toy Story 4. There's a scene in the movie where Woody is in a backpack with Forky and he's not alive yet, or he doesn't know he's alive. And all of a sudden, like Forky's googly eye like falls down, and then Woody like slowly turns and looks at him, and then Forky just screams at him, and it's like a jump scare. And there's a baby watching the scene, and the baby starts crying because it was like a jump scare. It was so funny. But yeah, that's what made me think of.
Well, like one time in my house, I was like 4 or 5. Actually, I think it was older than that. I think it was about 6. And my brother was a big fan of the Batman animated series. I was not as much of a fan of it. He was real into it at that age. He's about 2 years younger than I am. But the episode where Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face, like he gets the acid in his face and he turns around and he has like the blue, gross Two-Face. That freaked the fuck out of me for weeks. Weeks. I was terrified of this thing. Like I had nightmares about it. And that's the thing with like horror for kids is for a lot of kids, like, this might be the first, like, alien type thing that they've seen. I mean,
Right.
Alien the movie type thing that they've seen, which is kind of neat. Speaking of alien type things, hello, baby Zillow Beast, which I
Okay.
immediately identified as soon as I saw it, that I was like, oh, this is the Zillow Beast one.
You're gonna hate me because, again, like most people out there, it's been forever since I've seen Clone Wars, so I had no
Yes.
idea what this was the whole time.
I wanted to get your impression of that because I just
Yeah.
watched through all of the Clone Wars because when it became apparent that my boyfriend and I were going to be get together for a while, he needed to know about Star Wars. And then I also listened to both Dark Side Divas and First Steps, a Star Wars podcast, both of whom just did chronological watches of the Clone Wars. So I was very familiar with the Clone Wars, but I wanted to get your impression of, did you know what the fuck this was?
I had not a damn clue
At
what
any
this
point.
was.
At
any
any point. So even when they're talking about on Coruscant, you don't remember.
Don't remember a damn thing. Literally, I got to the point where I was like, is this just Godzilla? Like, what is this thing? It's got all the same rules as Godzilla. It was like, oh, it electricity or nuclear power or something makes it like stronger. And I was like, so they're just ripping off Godzilla. But then I was like, okay, wait a minute. I feel like I've seen this before. And I know because now after I've gone back and been like, oh, this is in fucking Clone Wars. And it's the episode where it gets loose in Coruscant, right?
Yes, they do.
Okay.
They find it on Malastare, they bring it to Coruscant, and it gets loose in Coruscant. And it immediately decides it's going to make it its life mission to fucking murder the shit out of Chancellor Palpatine.
Got it.
Which, there's a pretty good theory that I actually agree with, that Zillow Beasts are force sensitive, and it immediately clocked that Palpatine was a piece of shit, and it needed to kill him.
Oh, okay.
It keeps trying to get at Palpatine. But my question then would be for you, Bradley, do you think, because there's no way of really knowing, do you think this made you enjoy the episode more or less that you did not know what the Zillow Beast was until after you watched it?
I think it enhanced my viewing after the fact. Not knowing, because I think like not knowing the whole time, it was fine. Like, there's no reason to like. I don't think it matters whether or not you know that this is a Zillow Beast or not. I think it's just interesting. Like, it's a monster that's in Star Wars. However, after the fact, finding out that this was in fact a Zillow Beast, then knowing the history of one, if you've watched the Clone Wars, this is kind of like an Easter egg slash kind of almost like bonus points for you. If you're watching, you're like, oh, I've seen that before. I know what that is.
Which was my reaction the second I saw it, and I was like, okay, that's a baby Zillow Beast. We're getting bigger Zillow Beast. Now, some people saw like the Zillow Beast in some of the trailers. I completely missed this.
Yeah, I did
So, like,
not see
First
that.
Steps, a Star Wars podcast talking about like the Zillow. Every time I listen to their episodes and they mention how excited they were for the Zillow Beast, can't wait to hear the coverage on this episode, y'all. Every time they would mention it, I was like, where the fuck was the Zillow Beast in the trailers? Did they mistake the creatures from episode 4 as Zillow Beasts? Like,
Right.
what's going on? Nope. The minute I saw the thing, I was like, oh yeah, okay. There's a Zillow Beast. It's gonna grow into the Zillow Beast at some point. Like, it has to. Yeah, so they find a baby Zillow Beast and they start shooting it. I do like that they just use blasters. I also like that Omega is like also firing. In fact, there's a moment like where they encounter it in the power grid and she starts firing first. Like, it goes at Tech and Omega's just like, and then I pulled out my bow and started blasting.
Yeah, got to.
It's just, I mean, probably the right call in this case. Speaking of Omega, this little moment when they're outside, several things happen in tandem, all of which I like because we get a moment for every single one of the characters that shows off their personality. Tech makes a comment like, well, it's probably not hungry because it ate all of the crew. Omega, who is a child, is like, the fuck do you mean it ate all of the crew? She takes a step back and Hunter steps up into her to put his hand kind of around her a little bit because she's clearly horrified by this.
Right.
So Wrecker steps up to kind of like protect her and comfort her and be like, Tech, dude, shut the fuck up. Tech goes to say something else, like puts his hand up like he's gonna say something else, and Hunter just steps in and is like, go do this thing. And Tech's like, okay. I loved this whole little
Little interaction, yeah.
2-second interaction between all of them, because I think it did between Omega's genuine horror at she's never encountered something getting fucking eaten before, to Wrecker, trying to be comforting, to Tech wanting to say something and Hunter knowing well enough to cut in. I just loved it. I loved all of it. The bit where they're flying over and Wrecker is kind of shooting down at the Zilla Beast, it gave me video game vibes. I don't know why. Like a turret section in a video game, which a lot of this show is. Like, contains various things that I'm like, oh, you almost could be from a video game. Some things are.
Yeah, I realize, what they haven't done? I mean, I don't play this game, but I feel like you could incorporate a lot of aspects of the show into the Battlefront games. Just like as like missions / games.
Yeah, I think they've shut down like new content for Battlefront. They did shut down new content for Battlefront 2. I remember, because do you remember at the start of these episodes we talked about that, like, I look at about 95% of controversies and go, this is bullshit. When they shut down a multi-year long game that had been running for an extended period of time, and they didn't even shut it down, actually. That's the wrong verbiage. They just said, we're not making any new content for it. We're keeping it up and running. You can still play it.
Right.
Everything's the same. We're just not going to support it with new content anymore. We're going to move on. And the collective Star Wars fan base who simps for major corporations and thinks that corporations care about you, did whole petitions to like support Clone War or support Battlefront 2 with more content. And I'm like, they're like, one of the ones that was the dumbest one that I saw was like, we are willing to pay you our money if you will continue to support. I'm like, don't tell EA you're gonna give them your money.
They already do that shit.
EA are bastards. They're fucking bastards, dude. They want your money. Don't simp for EA. Don't tell them you're willing to give them money. Make them fucking earn it.
Yeah.
Christ.
I'm thinking
That
also
was so dumb.
Shouldn't they just make another game then? If they're like,
they're probably making another one.
They're probably already making a third one then, right?
Okay, they're probably making a Battlefront.
Got it.
Is probably what's going on. I genuinely recommend to people going on YouTube and watching someone else play the Battlefront 2 story campaign, because it's actually really good. It had a good tie-in novel. It's pretty great. And it got a continuation that was also very good. Cool. So yeah, it's probably going to get a Battlefront 3. Hopefully we get an actual like story mode or maybe like a Galactic Conquest again this time, because we're getting super off track. I would like to see the Bad Batch in that. Although they did add the Bad Batch to Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga.
Yeah, but they added everything to that, so that don't count.
They did not add Omega, which is annoying and dumb.
That's sexist.
They added, kind of is.
That's
no,
ageist.
like it kind of is. Sexist, definitely. I do think that they didn't include Omega as a character in the character pack. For the Bad Batch, it's only the Bad Batch. She's a main character in the show. And like,
she's the main character in the show, basically.
Yeah, arguably she's the main character in the show.
Right.
You have like child Anakin, I'm pretty sure, and child Boba. I don't know why you wouldn't put like child Omega in it, or it doesn't make sense to me. Make it make sense. You literally have Grogu in there, and he is a infant. Fuck off. Anyway, we've gotten massively off track. My next note is, hello again, the Zillo Beast. Which one qualm I do have about the episode is once the Zillo Beast becomes the Zillo Beast, it doesn't do very much.
Yeah, it's just kind of there.
It just eats power and screams and tries to run away. And like, maybe the Zillo Beast will come back. I bet they're going to free it in the finale.
Also, so we know that this is a cloned Zillo Beast?
I believe they said it was a cloned Zillo Beast, and they'd gone in and they'd fucked with it to make it even more resistant to blaster fire, because the original was resistant to blaster fire.
Gotcha. Okay, because I was confused about like it was a clone. So is this theoretically a clone of the original one from the Clone Wars?
It is a clone of the original one from the Clone Wars, but one that they've specifically gone in and fucked with. So for people who are like Bradley and did not want to go back and watch the original episode, they do kill the original Zillo Beast at the end of that episode. And then Palpatine is like, take the Zillo Beast away and clone it, and then he does an evil smirk at the camera, and then this is never fucking mentioned again, because the Zillo Beast was such an absurd model that they never brought it back, because that episode was absurdly expensive and time consuming.
Makes sense. Okay.
But yes, the Zillo Beast is here. The animation is gorgeous, like once again. However, I want to move on from that quickly. And do mention we get a few shots of Gonki, which is nice. I'm glad the show remembered Gonki exists.
Mm-hmm.
Yay. I love the bit where Tech's like, I'm not done downloading the data. We can't leave. And Omega's just like, unplug. You're done. Let's go.
Right. We're about to die. We need to leave.
Ugh, I did love that. I'm skipping over a bunch of stuff here, so we need to move on. The Empire captures the Zilla Beast. The Bad Batch is escaping. The Empire starts landing troops on this village that all saw the Zilla Beast, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, this is getting
y'all
interesting.
Shouldn't have seen that.
So I'm very confused, like what happens at the end here, because I was like in this watch through, I was like, so are they gonna like just murder all these people?
Nothing
like...
fucking good is going to happen to them.
Jesus.
Nothing
like,
fucking good is going to happen to them. Because they saw something they were not supposed to see.
Right.
And did you watch Chernobyl, Bradley?
No.
Did you watch?
I watched
should
the first
watch
episode,
Chernobyl. But... It's a lot of the same team as did Andor.
Okay.
Did Chernobyl. It's really good. But this also happens, and this happened like in real life too. It's one of the things that is accurate. That all of the people in Pripyat, who is the town that was near Chernobyl when the reactor melted down, they were basically told, you're gonna leave for like 2 weeks, pack all of your stuff, we're relocating you, and they never went back.
Got it.
So this was a thing that has happened. Quite a few governments have done this too, is that if people have the misfortune of being too close to a thing that happens, the government will, best case scenario, relocate you. Worst case scenario, you will disappear. So that's bad. Fascism is bad. I don't know if we're getting that impression from the various shows coming out this year, but we don't like fascist governments very much. I do like how when the Marauder sweeps down and they get on, Tech secures Omega's brace first before putting on his own. My friend who is a flight attendant would be delighted to see this. What is it with... I feel like every gay man in the world knows at least one gay flight attendant. Like, one of the people in your circle is guaranteed to be a flight attendant, and another one is guaranteed to be a real estate agent.
Just one?
At least one. I have one flight attendant and about 3 real estate agents.
I like that. Oh, I trump your real estate agent because I have a couple who is a real estate agents together.
Oh.
So they have a joint venture as real estate agents together, and they are married. I
could not work with a partner. I could not do that.
No, please do not do that, people.
No, my partner is who I come home to vent about my day.
Yes, and if you work with your partner...
I don't want to work with my partner.
No.
That's a terrible idea.
Never work with partners or family, people. It is a bad idea. Do not do it.
Yes. The only reason I can get away with kind of working with my best friend is that we make so little money from the venture that I don't care about it.
There you go.
And so if he fucks up the bookkeeping, which he has done on multiple occasions, it doesn't bother me that much.
No, there you go.
I briefly lost track of where it was in my notes. Okay. They're going to send the data on the Zilla Beast to Echo and Rex, which rules. I'm sure that will come back later. Cut to Mount Tentis. We see some stuff that happens. I do want to note something about this clone trooper that's talking to Dr. Hemlock before we get into the conversation on the landing pad. So do you remember all the way back in War Mantle, my favorite episode of season 1, where they run into the clone commando and I'm like, oh, that's the same markings as Scorch from Republic Commando, a character who is technically canon, but not explicitly confirmed that that is Scorch from Republic Commando. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
I know you've drunk a lot of alcohol since then, so
yeah, I vaguely remember this, but yes.
Yes. Yeah, it's Scorch. It's confirmed by the end credits, being voiced by D. Bradley Baker, who voices all of the clones. It is confirmed by the credits that that is Scorch from Republic Commando. I did double check what happens to Scorch in Legends. Scorch does join the Imperial Commandos. He does remain with the Empire after Order 66. That book series started with the first Imperial Commander novel and never finished because Karen Travis, who is a shit writer and very bad, basically got super mad that George fucking Lucas decided to not do Mandalorians exactly 100% like she wrote them in her books and refused to do any more Star Wars novels. I was actually just having a conversation in the Divas Discord like 2 days ago about the Mandalorian, like the episode of the Mandalorian, and somebody pointed out to me, they were like, Charles, I really love how every time you bring up something from the Republic Commando series or Imperial Commando, you have to stop and specify how bad of a writer you think Karen Travis is. And I'm like, yes, I will continue to do this until the end of my life. Because I don't like those books very much.
Well, then take that as the opportunity that you need to pitch your own Republic Commando books to Penguin House Publishing or whatever, whoever does
It's Del
Star Wars
Rey
now.
that publishes. So Del Rey publishes the Star Wars books in association with Lucasfilm. I could pitch that. Here's the thing about my Republic Commando series.
It would be very gay.
Well, one, it would be very gay. Anything I wrote for Lucasfilm would be extremely gay. Like, we're talking Alyssa Wong levels of gay. It would be how much gay I would want to put in it.
Gotcha.
No, I don't know if people would want me to write that for the same reason that I've always wanted to write a Warhammer 40k tie-in. But I don't think anyone else wants me to do it. Because my view on Warhammer 40k and also the Republic Commandos is probably going to be a little different than other people's views. A Republic Commando novel for me would be very interesting, let's put it that way.
Okay, we'll keep that in mind for Lucasfilm.
Yes, so Lucasfilm, that's not a thing that I want to pitch. But if you do want to hire me to write that, I am available and can write it. It's not the thing that I would want to write. I have a specific thing, actually, that I've always wanted to either write or see. This is not the space for that. I like the little animation touch where Hemlock is giving his orders to Scorch. And he reaches up with his, like, ungloved hand to touch his gloved hand. Like, almost like the gloved hand is mechanical and he's doing, like, a phantom touch. And, like, this is a thing he does when he's thinking. It's a choice that an actor would make, and the animators have done it. Which I mentioned in the Horizon Zero Dawn episode, that Hunter does some of these with his movement when he's in the helmet. And it's what makes the helmeted version so interesting and dynamic, is the animators are good enough at this point that some of these choices look like choices an actor would make. My only note about the Lama Su scene is, oh, it's this asshole again. I forgot how much I fucking hate this guy.
You have to have what do you call it? Not an antagonist, but a bad person. Just a bad
fucking
person.
dick. He's an asshole. You gotta have like a really good villain, and he's a really good villain. He's a kind of skeevy, wannabe political. Also, the voice. Think Bob, what is his last name? Bob Bergen is back voicing him and again having a ball being Lama Su. He's like your assistant manager or whatever that clearly wants to work for corporate, but is working as like an assistant manager. He has that vibe to me.
Gotcha.
All right, well, that's all my notes on the episode. Do you have any final thoughts on the episode, Bradley?
Yeah, this was a step up. And we're getting, I think like the last week's was not that bad. I think the week before was kind of meh. And then we were like, okay, we're finally getting something with Benny, and that kind of stuff was interesting. Now we're getting a little bit more into the end game of this season. So I think they're really starting to ramp up, like, okay, what's the final arc of this story? And they are hinting at that with, obviously, we got to get Omega. And I like where this one's going. I like the new characters. I feel bad for Omega that she's always going to be on the run for the rest of her life, clearly, because everybody always wants Omega. Now, whether or not they are successful in getting Omega would lead me to believe that that's our way of having yet another season of this show. But we'll see what happens in, Order 99. Who knows?
Plan 99.
Yeah, Plan 99, yeah.
My final thought to this is very much a maneuvering into place episode. I need to find a snappier way to describe that. But that's very much is what this is we're maneuvering the characters. There's like a conversation that Tech has with Hunter that I completely skipped over because I didn't have really anything that I wanted to say about it, where Tech is basically like, oh, the Empire doesn't want to wipe out cloning. They want to control it and monopolize it, which is a thing that authoritarian governments do, where they want to specifically control the means of production. Anyway, I'm not going to go off on that tangent, but they're clearly setting up where this is going to go. I thought that the episode was fine, plot-wise. The episode was really interesting, animation-wise, fun, well-directed. I just didn't think it was as strong as it could have been, but I don't really see that much, like, missed opportunity here. So overall, I really liked this episode. When I eventually do my rewatch, I'm probably not going to tune this one out, like I may certain other others this season,
Right.
and just kind of let it play while I do something else. This one I really like. Not as much as I liked last week, but this one I really like. We're headed into the end game here.
We sure are. Yeah, we got 5 episodes left, which is 4 weeks.
Let me see if I can name them. So
Okay.
we have The Outpost, Pabu, Tipping Point, The Summit, and Plan 99.
That's correct. And you did in order too.
I did it in order. Yay!
So yeah, we can guess that the Outpost is going to be Crosshair's episode.
Yeah, we're gonna go back to Crosshair.
Okay.
I think that their prediction is probably correct.
Got it. And then Pabu is going to be this random ass episode. I can already call it now. I don't know why. It's got a random ass name, so it's going to be a random ass episode. I'm already calling it.
It's the Red Fire Ferret.
Right. I'm telling you, it's going to be. They're just going to introduce that same
Legend
character.
Of Korra. Well, I'm pretty sure it's a Red Fire Ferret in Legend of Korra. I am almost certain that someone, probably from First Step, who are big Avatar and Legend of Korra fans, will tell me if I'm wrong on that. But I do think, I'm curious what that episode is. I don't want to say I'm excited for that episode, but I am curious about that episode.
I mean, clearly it's the episode where Omega gets her own fire ferret.
Yes, which is correct and good, and I love that for her.
Actually, I wouldn't mind her getting like a pet or something. Like, I feel like she could use like
she has
a dog
Gonki.
Or something. Nah, that don't count.
She has Gonki.
That's everybody's pet. I need her to have her own pet.
You want her to have her own droid. You want her to have her own pet. You just want Omega to have her own sidekick.
Which is AZ, which I need her to keep.
Which should have been AZ, but AZ got one brief. AZ has been in this show twice.
Yeah.
Once didn't even have any speaking lines. The speaking line was treated as a joke.
Maybe they'll get him back from Sid when she portrays them by the end of the season.
Maybe.
That's my guess, my theory.
I don't like how they've treated the droids in this season.
Yeah, they
forgot about Gonki. Yeah. They forgot about Gonki for 9 episodes. AZ is a punchline. They introduce a completely new droid in 1 episode for Fee, who then gets blown up. I don't like this. Anyway, we will be back next week for The Outpost and run the socials.
Thank you for listening to Gold Squadron Gays. Did Charles fuck something up? Send us a message at goldsquadrongays@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gold Squad Gays. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Gold Squadron Gays. Subscribe to us on YouTube at Gold Squadron Gays, where we post the podcast as well as exclusive content. Please join us next week and every week for more of Gold Squadron Gays.
It is with a heavy heart we are recording Gold Squadron Gays today because Charles Rogers is dead. Unfortunately,
Thank God.
On his deathbed, he told me, as he held my hand dying, he said, "Continue the show without me."